It's all screwed up out there, man, but you don't need me to tell you that. You already know.
Welcome to Deep Americana.
Hello, I'm Ray Carney. I'll be interviewing Chuck Dooms this morning. Over his recent surgery that has to do with Parkinson's, how that's affected his life, how he's getting through that, and we'll talk a little bit about art as well. And we'll be talking about his life and other various topics, and about his disability. And with that, Chuck, you want to tell us a little bit about your life?
Sure. My name's Chuck Dooms, 61 years old. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease about 5 or 6 years ago, and had one of the more common offshoots of that, which is tremors. The tremors affected to where I had trouble doing my photo collage artwork and eating, being able to take care of my clothing myself, and just it pretty much affected all parts of my life. About a year and a half ago, I had what's called DBS, or deep brain stimulation, where they implanted an electrode under just general anesthesia or local anesthesia. I wasn't knocked out all the way into the the left cortex of my brain, which is bilateral. It takes care of everything on the right hand side. And a few weeks later, they implanted a battery pack, not unlike a pacemaker, and they connected the two together, and then about another month after that, they turned it on to where the electrode kind of rotates, and it would send out an electrical signal to stop the tremors in my left hand, or in my right hand. And I have a little mini iPod that I use to turn it off and on, and actually I've had both sides done, so it's working well. It doesn't take care of all of the symptoms of Parkinson's, but in order to do my art that I like to do, it's helped tremendously.
I can imagine, like with that art, I imagine does that help with that situation as well, like, and rehabilitative?
It really does, because I don't work on paper. I work on my iPad. I have a large iPad.
Right.
That I do my photo collage work on, and just being able to place something in the right place, or digitally painting over. I've got a lot more control than what I did before the surgery. I'm not having to put a deft grip on the stylus when I'm using it, or on the iPencil. So yeah, it's made a huge difference.
Well, excellent. How do you view memes? Actually, how do you view memes? Kind of in the set. Do you view them as like art for our culture now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. I mean, I'm not a meme maker. I have the utmost respect for people who do memes, whether they're, just to be funny, or pull in information that's more serious. Memes and well, the people that make memes, I think, are kind of the in their office, they're sitting in their living room, they're finding pictures that they can get something out of. I mean, and it's creative. It's not something that everybody can do, or something that everybody wants to do. But yeah, I see it as it's only going to become more prevalent.
Right.
It's not going to go away.
Right. I fully agree with you there. I feel like it's kind of like how comic books were, where no one took that very seriously for a long time. So you could get themes in, you could get just about anything in a comic book because no one took it so seriously, and it would feel like gradually influence our culture. I mean, if you,
I think absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look how far cartoon books have come. I mean, we've got graphic novels now. We've got graphic novels of old classics that have been brought to life from the artwork. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is an art form, and I'll argue that to the death with anybody that thinks otherwise. They do have a place. Are all of them good? No, probably not.
Right.
But the fact that people are doing it,
Right.
that people are able to, kind of like me with doing my digital work and
No, it's the exact same
with
thing.
photographs.
Yeah.
Just if you're creating, don't worry about whether it's accepted or whether people like it or not.
Right.
Just take it.
Right. I think just like with your digital media that you're making, that's what memes are. I feel like it's just a newer, different medium. And I feel like it honestly kind of, with the idea of memes, is getting around the ideas of copyright in a lot of different ways. It's pretty interesting stuff. Let's see. So, how do you feel about, let's see here, because I live in a state where psilocybin is decriminalized. How do you feel about hallucinogens in conjunction to helping with mental health or just in general?
Well, I think they're only beginning to scratch the surface. I mean, here recently I'm reading about ketamine being used for treating people with what has basically been considered non-treatable mental illness. I mean, it's psilocybin and psychedelics don't cure, but they're getting some awfully good results by using very measured doses of ketamine to treat what in the past for many people has been non-treatable.
Right.
And you can't turn your back on that. You don't have to like it,
Well,
but you
right.
can't ignore it.
Well, one of the things I think to take away from a lot of that is if you look at our medications that we have now for mental health and things of that nature, you have psychotropic drugs, which are derivatives of LSD, but for some reason we've mixed into where it really slows you down, and then there's SSRIs and a lot of these other things, and I don't know, from what I've been looking at, it looks like you could replace a lot of these other medications with microdosing of these other things. I was reading about ketamine being experimented with by our veterans hospitals, the VAs, and a nasal spray for especially PTSD and mental type things. I think there's I agree, it is just scratching the surface.
Well, I think as time goes on, I mean, we have to remember, 30 years ago, opioids were the devil. Anything, whether it was heroin or even being able to give somebody a proper pain medication. And I remember many years ago, I was a hospice volunteer, and we had a hospice nurse come and speak, and she was talking about a patient of hers who was going through some type of cancer that was just terribly debilitating and painful. So they hooked them up with some, fairly high-grade morphine, and would just wake up screaming in dire pain. So this nurse contacted the doctor because she had to contact him every time they wanted to give him more morphine.
Uh-huh.
And the doctor said, and this just kills me, the doctor said, well, we don't want him to become addicted to them. For crying out loud, the man was dying. So this
Right.
nurse said one of the smartest things. She said, I tell you what, next time he wakes up screaming, I'm calling you at home. After that, the doctor didn't have any problem in making sure that patient got the medication they needed to be somewhat comfortable.
Right.
And I think the same thing is happening with some of the, when you're looking at psychotropics and things that can benefit people. Will it work for everybody? Probably not. But
Right.
to be able to at least try a small measured dose and see if that gives some kind of relief from the mental uncomfortableness that person is having to go through, why not try?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's pretty wild, that we've shunned all these things for so long, because there are clear medical benefits. Yeah. And if someone's dying, or even if someone has super chronic pain, I think they should be able to deal with that. Some degree of functionality.
Absolutely.
And especially when you bring the opioid stuff up, I think it's really interesting that we hear all this stuff about, and the pharmaceutical companies, they're horrible, and they've engineered a lot of things, but you rarely hear anything about heroin, which has a heavy influx right now, or heroin with fentanyl, or that I think a direct response to pain pills not being around as much as people are pressing their own and mixing fentanyl in them. And so it's I don't know. I think we need to get over some things.
I couldn't agree more, Ray. And the problem is that it's easy in the short game to say, well, yeah, we're making it harder for people to get hold of it, but that only increases the black market,
Right.
which we'll always find a way. I saw something recently about and not that crack is a drug anybody should mess with, but
Right.
it's becoming more popular now because it's cheaper.
Right.
The market's been flooded with it.
Yeah.
And that happens with every drug that we deem there's something wrong with it. Is that if enough is put out on the market, if you leave it up to the people that manufacture and put it out on the street, I mean it'll come back. It'll ring in again.
Yeah, a lot of these things, a lot of these things have. It's just it's to me, a lot of it boils down to kind of educational issues. Every single drug law is a direct response to some ethnocentric BS laws that it's based around. And I think everything there has kind of a medicinal thing. Quality, or anything can be used medicinally. It sounds like out of this stuff. And to me, a lot of it is complete propaganda, misinterpretation. Especially you got to think like the drug that enslaved the most people in our human history is sugar, right? And most people don't get that. We taught people in DARE programs that pot and crack cocaine are the same thing. You wonder why you get crackheads. Or people that are so embedded in that because they try pot and they, I'm fine there. It's just it's wild. I feel like we need, and on so many different subjects, we need clear information. I don't know. So. What do you want to talk about, Chuck? Okay.
Let's talk about art.
Okay.
And who gets to decide what's art and what isn't.
Okay.
You can pull memes back into this for that one.
Okay.
You know, why is it that people want to look down on what someone else is doing because it doesn't fit their definition?
Right.
You know, I've lived a while, and
Yeah.
one of the things I learned over time is that, you know, we can't put the power over us in the hands of other people. We can't listen to critics. We can't, you know, we have to find a way to shut down those outside voices that tell us that what we do doesn't count.
Right.
That just bugs the living shit out of me. There are a lot of people out there, especially younger artists, who are, you know, they want to show their work, which to me, and again, memes falls into this.
Right.
You know, they look at other people's work and it's like, you know, I don't know if my stuff is as good as theirs is.
Right.
You know, don't ever let what you think other people think. Don't get that room in your brain. Don't rent that space out.
It's hard to do, but I'm with you on it. You know, I don't think anybody. That's okay. So this will go into this is that I really despise the word talent, right? Because inherently, if someone says you're talented, you know, you were born with this ability. I don't think anybody ever that's made art was born with the ability to make the art that you're happy with, that you think is amazing. You know, it's working up to those points, and it can be frustrating. You know.
Oh, absolutely. And I myself will sometimes toss out that dreaded T word. And I think and I don't know, maybe a lot of people think this way, but when I think of talent, I think of a technical gift that you have. You know, I mean, hell, I can't draw stick people.
Yeah.
So if I could, then that might be a talent, but that's all it is. It's a mechanical response. And some people have very good mechanical responses, but I don't think that defines their work.
Right.
Not at all. I want to see them bleeding out of that painting. I want to see them laughing at themselves when they're setting up that meme. Talent, you know, you can teach anybody. I suppose I could meet someone who could teach me how to do proper stick figures. But at the end of the day, it's just something I've been taught. What I do with it is what makes it special.
Right. Yeah. It's yeah. It's the uniqueness. Yeah. It's when you put things. It is nice to make things and people kind of get them, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I've had some of my work. I've done something and put it on Facebook, and I'll have someone message me and say, "Are you okay? That's very dark. What was going on in your mind?" And you know what it is? 9 out of 10 times, I was bored.
Right.
You know, boredom is a great motivator for me and the kind of artwork that I do. I mean, I can be in a perfectly good mood and think, you know, I'm not going to do anything today. I'm just going to sit down and kill some brain cells watching game shows. And sometimes you do something for a while and you get bored, and then you go back to whatever your art form is.
Right.
Boredom is a really strong motivator, and I don't think it gets the credit that it should get. I'm never afraid to tell people, well, I was in a perfectly fine mood when I did that. I just didn't have anything else to do at the time, so I picked up and started fucking around with it.
Yeah. So I at times my creativity. Is generally I try to be pretty planned with things. As of late, I've been moving away from that myself, and trying to. And when I'm bored, I do come up with some things. But yeah, kind of a different process for me.
Yeah, well, and two, I think when you're working with memes, you kind of you know it's going through and looking at this massive archive I have of photos that I've downloaded and photos I've taken, and just go through them. And I've had people look through some of my pictures, and they're like, "What the hell are you going to do with that?" And the honest answer is I don't know.
Right.
Maybe a month from now, maybe a year from now, I'll think, oh, hey, I know I can use that and put it in with this, that, or the other, and have some fun with it. Because above all else, I mean, I'm not one of these people that thinks you have to suffer for your work. I mean, it should be fun. Sometimes it might start out kind of like work and be kind of labor intensive, and then personally I have to stop for a minute and say, wait a minute, you don't have any tremors going on, you aren't having to put a death grip on the stylus, you're able to figure out what color you want to use for digital painting, and remind myself that overall I'm a pretty fucking lucky bastard. I really am.
I think we all are.
Agreed.
In a lot of ways, It's and I come to those same points because most of the time when I'm working on something, it becomes fucking work. So like I come to those points, I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't, so on and so forth. This is actually really good. And I'll be like, oh, I think that's the nice thing about art is being able to kind of find a rhythm, especially if you've done it for a while. Not just a rhythm, but find different challenges within it. I think is the key for me, is to challenge through the aesthetic, but also I really like to challenge through the narrative. And by the way, I don't make any memes. I just put a lot up. But I think that memes can really help with the I think that's why critics probably have a lot of problems with memes, is because I don't think people are worried about ownership. Memes can very much become this anonymous vehicle to get, and they very much can get an idea across, right?
Exactly.
And I think that scares people, because then we're talking about art, so then we're talking about intellectual property, right, and copyright. And I feel like memes completely go around that. Now you put it in an exhibition or a gallery, it could be a different story.
Well, you're absolutely right, but at the same time, it's not going to stop. I mean, I always work really hard to try to use images that I find that don't have any kind of credit that's been
right.
credited to a particular photographer.
Right.
And I feel pretty safe in using those, because number one, by the time I'm done with it, I might use a little piece of it. I might not even use anything more than a pair of eyes from somebody.
Right.
And I'm pretty comfortable with that. But I don't know. There's something about digital art that people keep jumping on, like, well, you can't do that. Well, I figure until somebody sues the shit out of me, I can do what I'm doing.
Right.
And I'm comfortable doing it. And
right.
I've got dear friends who are like, well, you need to be careful.
Oh, no.
Sometimes I have to say, you know what, fuck, careful.
Right.
I'm having fun with this. I like this.
I was going to say,
the original owner of this image wants to sue me because I fucked around with it and sold
right.
it for $50. Bring it on.
I once made this beautiful, elegant image in a canvas that's shaped like a pop can, and it was about caffeineism, which I caught nothing but shit for when I went to school. And it was a Coca-Cola can, and the white stripe in the middle was like this silhouette of this chick with breasts or something, and it was completely crazy. But my professor convinced me. He's like, you don't want to get in trouble, and so I changed it. But as a result, I changed it. It was just terrible. Should never be afraid with, especially artwork, to censor your voice, even if it is going to, I use in my oil paintings and even in different illustrations, I use plenty of pop reference. But a lot of times I'll mix that up, or I will skew it enough that it's more of my thing, if that makes sense. Instead of yeah. I think we're all constantly stilling imagery. You got to think your eyes are like a camera, your brain is like a computer. So on and so forth. And so we're all constantly just really doing William S. Burroughs cut-ups, really.
You're absolutely right. It's like I tell people sometimes I will make that image mine. I will make it to where the originator of it won't want anything to do with it.
Right.
And I'm capable of that. Somebody has to paint the mustache on the Mona Lisa, Ray.
Right.
Somebody has to hold it up and kick it and twist it and tell it that it's time to do something else.
Right.
And I'm more than willing to paint that mustache.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, right. If you think back to think about Andy Warhol or Jackson Pollock, if they had done that, our art, and I'm not a big fan of either one of those guys, but our art, our culture, the art is a sign of that time. It's also a sign of what the art culture is doing at those times, if that makes sense. And so that's why, especially Andy Warhol just reprinting really commercial imagery and things of that nature, and it went so well in that respect. It was a sign of that time. It's confusing.
And I am a Warhol fan, but I think more than just his art, it's how he commercialized it and made.
Right.
I mean, he was making good money as a copy editor for a fashion magazine when he first started, quote unquote, doing his own art. He didn't have to do it. He was making real good money for the time.
Right.
But he decided he wanted to give the finger to and thumb his nose at art critics, and few people have ever done it as well as he has. Some of his stuff is complete shit, and I can live without it.
Right.
And others of it, I think, is just beautiful. It's the only word I can think of is it's audacious.
Yeah.
When you stand on top of a building and flip the bird to art critics or music critics or film critics and say, I really don't give a fuck what you like. I like this.
Right.
And somebody out there is buying it, so gotta be doing something right.
You would think. I don't know. I think some of my favorite artists make no money.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's interesting stuff. Let's see here. Well, I think we actually went for about 30 minutes, Chuck. I think
I think we did.
this concludes my interview with Chuck Dooms. Have a good evening. Have a serene sleep.